Hello again, everyone, and welcome. I hope you're having a good evening and good afternoon, and for some of my friends, it's very, very early morning in US. And thank you for your time and thank you for joining us. I'm just waiting for Anne to connect to us, and we will start our chat. And I'm looking forward to see all your names and. Please send us messages and send us questions, and here you go. I am going to add Anne right now. I'm just waiting for Anne to accept my request. Hi, Anne. Can you hear me well? Oops, she left. Hi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Very well. Well, welcome back, and thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Pleasure. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much. And it's very, we are friends, so we will chat just among friends. And I'll just say a few words of the introduction and welcome everybody to our little session. And then we'll just chat about your fascinating life journey and everything else.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Thank you for following me, and thank you for listening to all the different sessions, episodes on Conversations with Olga. Just a few words for someone who joined us the first time. I've started Conversations with Olga as an IGTV series during the circuit breaker, during the COVID-19, when I had more time, when I wanted to connect with my dear friends who are incredibly talented, incredibly inspiring, and we just wanted to talk about so many different things, and the platform of IGTV seemed to be the way to do it. And the series are fostering intellectual and cultural exchange between influential individuals all around the world. They are all sharing their life stories and in hopes to inspire and cultivate a more diverse and more inclusive community. So this is what it's all about, and today it's my honor to welcome my guest for Conversations with Olga, Anne Aslett. Just a few words about Anne, and then we'll continue with her going more in depth and so many different things. Anne is currently the Chief Executive Officer of the Elton John AIDS Foundation. The foundation is one of the most, as you know, well-known and probably the most successful celebrities foundations in the world, and has been with the foundation for about 20 years, I believe, Anne. And before you served as the executive director of the foundation. You're based in UK, and I have a privilege to get to know you and meet you a few years ago at the Celebrity Philanthropy Symposium, a project that I was involved in in partnership with my very dear friend, Jenny Santi, founder of Saint Partners from New York, Saint Partners Philanthropy Services. And we had an amazing time, all of us, at the Rockefeller. We did, right? Yes, at the Rockefeller Center in Bellagio in Lake Como. They really united, and it was incredible because we managed to invite the heads of very prominent celebrity foundations from fashion, from sports, from royalty, from Vatican, from Hollywood world, star singers, and we had a chance to discuss so many interesting challenges, I should say, and share so many different stories in a very, very closed circle and closed door where we felt extremely comfortable with one another. And this is how we basically become incredibly solid group of friends. We socialize on a very regular basis, correct, Anne? As a group and as individuals. And right now I have a privilege to chat with Anne and to share, and for Anne to share some of the most fascinating stories and basically more information, more interesting facts about the foundation. Um, and you actually came to philanthropy world from the commercial sector. You were in the news information service for the UK major print electronic media, correct? And you were a journalist, a paper journalist, as well as you're a documentary filmmaker and for current affairs and health issues. Why philanthropy? What made you switch? Tell us more about your journey.
So it was a personal issue for me in the beginning. I had a middle brother who I absolutely adored. We were best friends, and he was gay. And in the late 80s and early 90s, some of his friends started to get sick. And in the UK, we had a series of big, very scary public information campaigns about AIDS and the fact that anyone could get it and you died of it and there was no cure and so on. And eventually, one day, my brother sat me down and told me that he was HIV positive. And so, there was an incredibly strong personal desire to do everything I could to help him and to help his friends, because a lot of them I'd known. My middle brother was 6 years older than me, so a lot of them I'd known since I was a kid, and they'd been like big uncles to me. They'd been friendly and sweet. And as I got into teenage years, they talked to me about boyfriends and work and what did I want to do with my life. And it was just so tragic to see all these wonderful guys just getting sick and dying. So that was the inspiration to do it.
Yes,
And then I was directed to the foundation sort of through a friend of a friend who said that they needed some technical support with something. And I said I would help. And then, I got more and more kind of sucked in and loved it. But philanthropy was never part of my life plan at all. I was nosy, I guess. I was a nosy journalist,
Well, I think your character is such, and I'm privileged to get to know you and become friends with you. You're so kind, and you're just so solid that I think philanthropy as a notion on its own gravitates to people like you. So it's probably so also. Everything okay? Can you hear me? Anne? Sorry, I think we might be losing sound a little bit. Switch off one of the airport. Doesn't matter. Hello? Oops. We lost Anne, but just give us a minute and I'm sure she will. Shall I try to request? It happens. Technology is not perfect. Here you go. I connected to you again. No panic.
I'm sorry. I lost the sound.
Yes, that's okay. If something, as I said, technology is not perfect, so we'll connect again. I just request for you again, so not to worry. Well, it's interesting that you told your personal story, because the Elton John AIDS Foundation was established by Elton John, and I believe in 1992, and that's because after two of his very close friends died from AIDS, correct? One of them, of course, is Freddie Mercury, and another one is Ryan White, and that probably was his main mastermind to create the foundation. So it is also from very much of a personal story. What is the main mission at that time, or in general, for the foundation?
I think at that time, and I would say that my experience of most people who work in HIV, certainly over the last 20 years, it does come from personal experience. There's something about the disease, and I think the stigma and how cruel the stigma is around the disease, that really draws people in from a personal perspective. Yeah. I think at the time when the foundation was established, there was no cure. There was testing, but testing wasn't fantastically accurate. And I think really the idea was just to make life a little bit less painful and a little bit more dignified. You know, you have to remember when the foundation started, people were saying that AIDS was God's punishment for homosexuality. There was all kinds of misinformation about how HIV was spread. People were kind of carried out of hospitals in body bags after they died at night so as no one would see them.
Yeah.
And I think just, you know, it's funny, a bit like we have with COVID now, that thing of no one would touch someone who was HIV positive. They wouldn't hug them. They wouldn't come close to them. And so what the foundation was trying to do in the early days was really just provide that physical love and contact and support as much as anything.
Yes. Yes. Do you feel that there is still a lot of stigma about AIDS, or you think it's definitely less in comparison to when it was?
I mean, I think it varies in different parts of the world. Certainly in Eastern Europe, there's still a very, very strong stigma about AIDS, but to some extent, it's still there everywhere we work. I'm sad to say it's still around in the UK where I am now. It's certainly in the US, particularly in the southeast of the US. So it's the thing we haven't defeated, and it's the thing we must get over if we're going to end the epidemic.
Yeah, well, that's a part of life, and I believe the education comes of huge importance and that's why I think this week is a HIV test week, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
I saw your Instagram and the messages, and I think this is great. So the foundation does an incredible work through the fundraising, through the advocacy and grants as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about the programs of the foundation and how engaged the foundation is with the individuals in general around the world in special programs?
Sure. So the foundation is a grant-making program, which means we don't work actually on the front lines, because we feel there are fabulous organizations doing work in their own countries, and we want to support them rather than duplicate that or replace them. So we've funded over 3,000 grants around the world since we started. And we do that in a number of ways. The big engine for fundraising for the foundation in the beginning was events, and events are still very important. You know all about events, Olga?
Yes, I actually wanted to ask you about the Academy Awards party in Hollywood, but we'll talk about it a bit later.
Events has been a big part of it, and that's enabled us to, you know, one of the sort of standard things we've had in events for many years is a pledge opportunity where we talk about how a relatively small gift can make a huge difference. So things like we ran a series of events in the UK called White Tie and Tiara, which became very famous and attracted a lot of celebrities and a lot of attention, and obviously in the media it's the beautiful dresses and the diamonds and whatever that get the attention, but actually it was an opportunity to raise an awful lot of money. I think the events for the foundation, US and UK, over the years have raised, you know, in excess of $120 million. So it's been an enormous engine for us. And then we have a group of incredibly loyal and kind and generous supporters who make major gifts to our work. But as we've broadened out, we've increased the amount that we work with trusts and foundations, from, you know, the Gates Foundation to Comic Relief to many smaller foundations that specialize in certain kinds of work, and then governments. So it's changed dramatically from this organization that was raising some money to give out small amounts of grants to organizations, you know, to do a little bit of making life a bit more dignified, to we now have, you know, we had a collaboration with the Dutch government to support thousands of people in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, with the US government for an LGBT fund in sub-Saharan Africa. And then public-private partnerships. We have a big fund in Eastern Europe and Central Asia with Gilead, who's the largest producer of HIV drugs in the world. So we've really broadened out from, you know, I would say Elton's nearest and dearest to a really comprehensive range of different people who support us in different ways. And then beyond that, when you talk about advocacy, you know, it isn't just about us. It's about raising money and awareness for this fight globally. And so Elton and David, his husband, are passionate advocates for the fight against AIDS. And we've done a lot of work to try and make sure that those big flows of global money, whether it's the US government through something called the PEPFAR program, which is their HIV program, or the Global Fund for AIDS, TB, and Malaria, to make sure that those things keep receiving funds from national governments and corporations and institutions to do the amazing work that they do.
So that's why I believe the strong alliances are absolutely required to resolve some of the major issues, isn't it? And the foundation obviously plays a huge role and tremendous role in putting it all together. And has the focus changed of the foundation since the time it was established, and especially what are the priorities for the foundation these days at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, we went from that sort of providing a little bit of emotional support and dignity and a bit of pain relief in the early days, through to, you know, as the epidemic emerged, you suddenly realized, the world realized that there was this generation of children, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, who were going to be orphaned because their parents were dying in huge numbers. So we ended up doing a lot of work supporting children who were either living with sick parents or who'd been orphaned, for education, for emotional support, healthcare, those sorts of things. And then really it's the science that drives the changes, right? Yeah. So suddenly antiretrovirals become available, and they have this Lazarus-like effect on people who are really sick and who start treatment and a month later are well enough to go back to work in some cases. Really, really, after a long time of so much sadness and pain and death, to suddenly find this miracle. And so we pivoted a lot of our work most of our work into expanding treatment programs, and particularly for the most vulnerable, because, you know, it's easier for governments to expand programs for mums and babies. They're always considered like the safe, innocent, soft. Actually, there were populations that are hugely at risk, that it's less politically easy to support. So the LGBT community, people who sell sex, people who use drugs, people in prison, these people were enormously vulnerable and left out. And we've always taken the view that if you leave anyone behind, you can't end the epidemic. And the same dynamic applies now for COVID. You know, we know absolutely we have to do it for everybody.
Absolutely. So, there is no differentiation at all. So yes, of course, everybody is affected.
And you know, it's important to keep you know, stressing that and having that realization. And now I would say, you know, we have a lot of tools now. We have great testing. We have amazing treatment. We then made the discovery as a global community that when you're on treatment, it not only stops you from getting sick and dying, but you're no longer infectious, which was mind-blowing because it's a game changer, right? Suddenly, if you give people treatment, they can live well and with dignity, and they're not worrying about passing the virus on to anyone else. So an awful lot of our work in the last 5 or 6 years has been what we call test and treat programs, getting people to know their status and getting them on treatment. Sounds so familiar now with COVID, but it you know, it's been a long slog to kind of get there. And now there are 22, 23 million people on treatment around the world. So that's been, I mean, one of the most extraordinary global health stories.
It's incredible. To me, it's the way I see it, it's an incredible case study for COVID-19. There's so much similarity, correlation with these two, that I'm sure you've probably been bombarded with questions
there's a lot of discussion about, and as there should be, about how you learn from diseases like HIV and Ebola and tuberculosis, and how you apply them now, because it's a waste if we don't use these lessons. But the thing I think that's so critical, that we've always stressed very much and comes very much from Elton, is this notion of love and compassion. And what we discovered was that actually having the love and compassion to put people on treatment not only saved their lives, but was a big part of prevention as well.
Yes.
But you had to have the love and compassion to put
Yes.
people on treatment. And before that, there'd been a lot of, treatment and prevention were viewed as two options rather than two sides of the same coin. So our goal now is a combination of proving that you can run really effective, successful programs for vulnerable populations all around the world, and then convening larger groups, because we're relatively small in the philanthropic ecosystem.
Certainly doesn't seem like it, but
but to then convene larger groups where you speak with one voice and really make the case about why putting people on treatment, removing barriers, removing stigma and discrimination is going to make this global change to this epidemic. And so there's more advocacy, more communications, more convening than just what we fund on the ground. But what we fund on the ground is essential. Obviously, it's our connection to the community, it's our legitimacy, it's everything,
I think it's extremely important. We are living through the history these days, and some of the part of the history you lived through is being a pioneer in the AIDS foundation, is basically supporting AIDS causes and working on at the foundation, and you can see how much emotional and mental and financial burden it all causes, that it's not only the virus itself, and I'm sure you obviously been through that and you've seen it all throughout all these years through the philanthropy at the AIDS Foundation, but I think it's exactly what we are going through these days, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was, I wasn't there at the very beginning, but even when I started in this work, it was lonely, people didn't want, AIDS was not a popular cause. It was popular in the entertainment community because a lot of people, were affected. But beyond that, it really wasn't something. And a lot in my personal life, socially, when people asked you, what do you do? And you said, well, I work for an AIDS foundation. They were like, okay.
Yes. It's a taboo, I guess. It was a taboo at that time.
Very big taboo, very big taboo, and endlessly hearing, the same kind of stereotypes about what people's understanding of HIV was, which has changed and broadened a great deal.
Yes. Thank you. Well, it brings me to the subject of your benefactor, Elton John. Your patrons are really incredible. The pool of people, celebrities who support the foundation, obviously is unbelievable. And I'll mention just to our listeners just a few, but I'm sure most of them probably know the names and they know who's supporting the foundation. And it's including Billie Jean King, Elizabeth Hurley, and Trudy Styler, and Ilana Kloss, and Lord Ali, and Sting, and Donatella Versace, and David Williams, and David Beckham, and Victoria Beckham, just to name a few. How do all these amazing people and amazing names and celebrities, what is their primarily role, and what are their responsibilities to the foundation itself?
So it varies depending on who it is. Obviously with high-profile celebrities like the Beckhams, they just have this incredible ability to raise awareness of the issue, to bring people into the issue. Victoria Beckham did a post for our Christmas campaign, which got tons and tons of likes and shares. And so for celebrities, it really is the opportunity to raise the issue. And then there are some, Wahid Ali, who's been a patron for a very long time, who's in the House of Lords in the UK, has been incredibly useful, and also, comes from a mixed race background and can talk about some of the challenges that we need to overcome, some of the policy issues and so on. Louise and Theo Fennell. Theo Fennell is obviously a very wonderful jeweler, and they've been, in the early days when I first started, we did what's now called a pop-up shop, but didn't really exist then, we did something called Out the Closet, where Elton
Oh,
opened his
okay.
closet
I prefer that name actually.
and gave us a whole ton of his wardrobe to sell for the charity. And Louise Fennell, who's the most lovely, wonderful woman, and I sat on the floor of this empty space for 3 weeks marking up clothes. You know, she gave over her complete life to do this. So it sort of depends, but they're all incredible in different ways.
But that's most important when these celebrities, they're just human and they're kind people. They're humble and they're human and they're just normal. And when they put their time and effort into the help to support foundations like this, that's all what it counts.
It's true. And you know, we live in a very cynical world where particularly the media is always very skeptical about why celebrities get involved in certain things. And, you know, I can understand that. That's fair enough. But one thing I would say is, because all of these people are, you know, they know Elton as a human being, as a friend. And they know that he and David, this is not a trophy project. This is something that they've been doing for decades. They care passionately about it. Elton has said, I will keep doing this until I die. And I think that has been, you know, so compelling to people who love him and know him, that they're like, yeah, I really, really want to help. You know, I really, this means something. And I know this is a solid and completely honest and authentic campaign to wipe out this disease. So it perhaps changes the nature of the celebrities' involvement a little bit, given that it comes from that place.
And that actually brings me to the question or the subject we actually all discussed during our symposium at the Rockefeller Center in Bellagio. What are maybe you can share and I can refresh a little bit of a conversation that we had at that time. What are some risks and liabilities associated with this unique nature, unique culture of celebrity philanthropy? Because it's certainly very, very different. And I experienced it on my side when I've done the fundraising events with a celebrity presence. And it's definitely a completely different culture.
It is very different. I mean, there are pros and cons, right? Because if you're a celebrity, I absolutely accept tons and tons of opportunities and offers that charities that aren't headed by a celebrity don't get. But at the same time, we have to be so it's hard to say no. And there are a lot of things that you have to say no to, is one. Also,
and thank you so much for saying yes to be on my chat today, by the way.
Well, I wanted to. I mean, as you say, we've spent time together. I know your passion about making a difference.
Thank you.
So we get a lot of opportunities that we have to say no to, and also we've tried to keep a bit of space between Elton's commercial career and his philanthropic work, and not muddle the two, because the reason why it works so well for him to head up a charity, or one of the reasons why, is because he's Elton John, because he's known all over the world, because his music's loved all over the world. We don't want to exploit either. It has to work for each on their own terms. So there's challenges there. Sometimes you are subject to a much higher level of scrutiny than a lot of charities would be, because it's a big story. If a project from the Elton John AIDS Foundation goes wrong or something, you know, that becomes a big press story in a way that it might not for another charity.
The vultures are waiting. Yes.
Exactly. It's true. There is that sense.
True, isn't it? Yes.
But you know, on balance, there are also an awful lot of positives and opportunities. So, yeah.
And you mentioned it a little bit, and I just want to continue. It's how do you leverage Elton John's fame in order to do the correct and tasteful and respectful marketing and fundraising? And you know, as you just mentioned, that you have to be very, very careful with do's and don'ts and the acceptance of certain offers and propositions and things like that. How do you manage it?
So we have a very rigorous assessment system for everything that we engage in, and we work very closely with Elton's commercial management team to make sure that, you know, there's never this is never actually what should be a commercial project, but is going through the back door of the charity. Yes. So very, very rigorous assessment. And then in terms of him personally, we haven't used, for example, his concerts to do bucket drops or those kinds of things, because we want him to be Elton John when he's on stage, and not always to be about the foundation. But where we do use him is he hosts our fundraising events with David Furnish, which is fantastic and is a huge huge draw. He's obviously incredibly, his track record on this means that when we work with governments, when we are engaging in advocacy, when we take him to the Senate, for example, to give testimony about how US tax dollars are being used to save lives from HIV around the world, that's the appropriate place for him to be, in my view, because he has this long-standing experience and direct relationship. He's traveled all over the world. He's seen this at first hand, and we supply him with, the backup data to make both the heart and the head kind of argument, which he does so brilliantly. And David does a great deal as well. So, he doesn't ask for money. I don't think that's fair. It's a bit intimidating to have Elton John staring you.
He doesn't have to. People, I think, when his presence, people just volunteer much more than when there is no presence. I think it's a part of the deal.
But it doesn't seem fair to do that. So he talks about the need. He thanks people. He talks about the need to donors at events, to governments. But he isn't. We're not putting him in the line of holding his hand out. That's something we do as the foundation. So that's how we keep it appropriate. Yeah.
Sure, I understand. And I believe the personal message coming from someone like Elton John makes a huge difference. So you don't really need to plead or ask for money. I think just the message, the passion of this particular celebrity, I think makes a huge difference.
And he is very passionate, and he and David together. David's brilliant on explaining the dynamics of why we're trying to work in a certain way or in a certain country. So they're a formidable duo between the two of them. Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, they look like an absolutely loving couple. Well, that actually, I'm sure everybody wants to know, how does it feel to work with such a celebrity as Elton John and David? I know you shared some of the quirky and interesting and kind and sweet and funny stories with us, and I don't want to pry, but if there's anything that I'm sure everybody wants to listen to, some episode from your life and from your relationship with the couple, if you want to share, or if you can share it will be lovely.
There've been a lot.
It's associated with fundraising, it's even better.
He gives 100% on everything he does. So it sets a high bar for the whole team. When we're working, we know that if he's giving 100%, we should be giving 100% too. But no, there've been lots of fantastic things. I think one thing recently that really struck me was, and it's an indication of what Elton's like, is that when he received the Légion d'honneur in 2019 from Macron, instantly he wanted to use it as an opportunity to raise awareness about HIV as well. So to hear him being honored and lauded for being this incredible musician and writing songs that had changed people's lives or that were associated with some of the most important things in their lives, and then watching him hold hands with Macron and go out onto the stage and make the pitch for filling the coffers of the Global Fund at that time was just incredible. But I've been in lots of townships and very rural places in sub-Saharan Africa with him, and it's interesting because you can see people look at him like, you're definitely not from around here. You don't look like you're from around here. But I'm always astounded at how quickly, even in really, really rural locations, within minutes, people will appear, you know, someone somewhere. And often it's not, sometimes it's the music. The Lion King a lot has been a huge thing with Elton, particularly.
I lost, I'm sorry, everyone. We have a bit of a glitch. We lost the sound. It's probably the Wi-Fi. Here you go. Can you hear me? Anne? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you again.
Okay.
Yes, no,
sorry,
no,
I don't know
no
what
issue.
happened there.
Yes, continue.
So,
No, please continue.
His friendship with Princess Diana, things like that, is often what he's known for, not necessarily the songs. I think another one amazing was we did we went to a hospital once in Durban, where we had funded a group. This is before drugs were available in hospitals, in public hospitals, and we funded a group to do like an income generation thing, making things to sell, to raise money for so that they could afford their treatment. And there was this wonderful, wonderful, handsome woman in her 30s, and Elton said, "So what are you doing here? How did you get involved?" And she said, "Well, I was diagnosed with HIV, and I went to the doctor, and I was told how much it would cost for treatment, and I had my daughter tested as well, and my daughter tested positive as well, and I knew I couldn't afford to do both. And the doctor said to me, honestly, you would be better to take treatment for you, because if you get sick and die, your daughter is going to be enormously vulnerable. She'll be an orphan anyway." So this unbelievably heart-wrenching story. And then this woman said, "But I joined this group, and now I earn enough money for both of us to be on treatment, and we're both well, and we're both healthy." And I looked at Elton, and looked at me. The tears are literally like brimming in our eyes. And he turns around to this choir. The woman who's talking is part of a choir, and he turns around to the choir and he says, "We have a party in our house back in Windsor, just outside London, every year, and we've had Rod Stewart and Lady Gaga and Mary J. Blige and Justin Timberlake and all of these people perform, and I want to invite you guys to come and perform and sing." And the whole place just erupted, and
oh my God,
all of us laughing and in tears and laughing at the same time. And they did, and they came and performed live on stage. So he makes magic happen a lot of the time. It's a great privilege.
It's incredible. I have goosebumps just hearing the stories from you. Unbelievable. Well, thank you for sharing very much.
Pleasure. There's lots of them.
I can imagine, and I would love to hear more and more. How does social media affect, or if it makes an effect with the fundraising and with kind of, is it a good connector? Is it good for connecting and fundraising in general? Or what are the pros and cons in association with the social media in terms of misinformation, in terms of the political motives, self-gratification, and et cetera, because to be honest with you, I'm quite careful with social media, and I have definitely plenty pros and cons to say about it. I would like to hear what's your opinion on it.
Yeah, I have to say we don't use it so much as for fundraising at the moment. The advantages are, obviously, it's a fantastic way to bypass a whole load of other potentially factually incorrect or harmful information that's out there, and go directly to people. So you mentioned the HIV testing week. It's our opportunity to say directly to people, this is important. Yeah. You can live a safe and healthy life if you test. So we use it a lot like that, I would say. But we've also done, so Elton did an Instagram live with Jonathan Van Ness from at Oscars last year, and that was an opportunity for them to talk about all of the myths and preconceptions about HIV and being gay, and also showing role models. Showing Jonathan was so incredible about saying, I'm HIV, I'm not ashamed, I'm healthy and proud and successful, and I feel great, and I want everyone to know that. And that's huge, because one of the ways
That's
that
huge.
HIV,
Yes.
it's huge because HIV really flourishes in the shadows. It lives in this place of fear and shame, and once people are prepared to say, and it's a big ask, but once people are happy to say, yeah, I'm not ashamed. Actually, I'm really proud of the fact that I live with HIV
Yes.
and I'm healthy and
Yes.
I'm open. I have no secrets. Everybody listening to that, anyone who in the back of their head is thinking, God, I should go and get an HIV test, or I wonder if I put myself at risk, or I think maybe someone in my family is HIV positive, but I don't dare talk to them about it. Social media is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing for that. And then we also, we use social media we have a big HIV testing campaign amongst young men in Kenya.
The one that I saw today, isn't it? Yes. Yes, it was great. I really liked it.
And it's quite, it's quite sexy and quite it's appealing to young men. And so there's no point in sort of sharing some very dry kind of, you must wear a condom. We're trying to speak to them in a way that they'll understand. And that's been incredible. I mean, we're promoting self-test kits and going and buying self-test kits. And social media has been an incredible tool like that. I mean, obviously the cons are that, not for us, but in general, it's a way to spread misinformation and hate.
Yes. Unfortunately, jealousy and hate, and yes.
And when you come out and say things about, being happy and proud that Joe Biden, for example, President Biden has just revoked the ban on LGBTQ, on trans in the military in America, you get this huge wave of people who are very anti and very angry and very, very prejudiced against that. So it can be a source of misinformation. We see stuff online with people peddling HIV cures, and that obviously is very unhelpful. But social media is here to stay. Particularly, it's the way young people engage with the world. It's where they get most of their information. So our view is, we need to be better at it. We need to be more engaging at it.
Yes. We need to. I feel that we need to. Exactly. I feel that we all need to filter it within our own self. What to accept, what to believe, and what to express as well. And then just to be a little bit more mindful how we behave on the social media in general. That's just
I think what's helpful actually is, I think discussions are really helpful, rather than just posts. So Elton and David did a TikTok actually on World AIDS Day in December, where they brought a whole load of young influencers and performers like Sam Smith and Sam Fender, but a whole load of young people, young influencers, to really talk about HIV, to bust some myths, to share their personal experiences. And I think, human beings we pick up on what's authentic. And so I think if your message is good and your message is appropriate and honest, I think it cuts through a lot of the misinformation.
Exactly. A lot of fake, and this is
But it's definitely a double-edged sword, I would say.
Yes, I agree with you completely. Are there many of the HIV positive people who start to donate and start to support foundation as well? Do you have a lot of people who were helped by the foundation, who become the supporters as well? Sort of as a
yes.
Does foundation create a community of the followers and the people who start to fundraise and help the efforts?
Yes, they do. I would say the way people living with HIV help more is just in being super brave and telling their stories. I mean, yes, absolutely. They, come to events, donate. The stigma around HIV is still such that it's quite possible we have supporters and donors who are living with HIV and we don't know that they are, because there's a stigma about that publicly. But I've just been bowled over over and over again about the people who will come forward, especially young people who will come forward and talk about their experience in a really brave and honest way. And that's probably the biggest gift that they can give us.
And you being involved with philanthropy and with this incredibly kind cause, and you've done so much. If you would be given a chance, what would be the other cause that you would wish to support, or you would imagine you be willing to be part of?
I think
health-related, art-related, education, culture?
I think it would be about women. One of the things that I've really has just come up over and over and over again in the work that we've done is what it feels like to not have control of your life, to be marginalized, to have decisions about how you live, who you live with, who you marry, who you have sex with, whether you have access to education, controlled by other people. And so I think of all the other things that I could do. I mean, like everyone, I worry about climate change, but I honestly don't feel I know enough about it to be useful. But I think with issues around women and women's equality would be my other big.
I will join you, Anne, anytime. I will.
Okay, Olga.
I better second that, and I'll join you for sure. Anyway, there is a plan for us to regroup all of us together, so that might be quite a big part of perhaps our forum or symposium next time, if our men will agree for part of the group, right?
And I think too often men we have branded men as the problem. We have to figure out how to make them part of the solution as well. But women's equality and mental health, I think too. And I don't know about you, but I've really noticed as this coronavirus has gone on and lockdowns have come and gone and come back again, and we've missed being with loved ones for Christmas and stuff. I really it's surfaced so many issues around mental health, and mental health is now incredible, thanks to again some really brave people who've spoken out, high profile people like the Duke of Sussex, and people in their lives talking about mental health really openly and honestly, sports people and so on. There's a moment now to talk about,
absolutely, because it's definitely very relevant. It's so relevant and so obvious, and statistics are being shown and being spoken about that the COVID is one thing, is a virus that is an issue, is a pandemic and fighting the virus itself, but in terms of mental health issues and issues that are coming that are also going to become mental health issues due to the economic issues for sure. It's incredibly important, and we all see it around us. We all face it one way or another, and we all go through our moments. So definitely, and then that brings me to the question: how do you relax then? What is your downtime these days?
So exercise for sure.
Good girl. Oh my God.
I think mainly because I love the way that exercise takes you out of your head and into your body. So when you do feel that stress, when you do feel, I've been sitting in this room every day for the last year and things are crowding in on me. If I do some exercise, I can throw that away.
Clears your mind.
The other thing, I mean, I never, ever in a million years would have thought I would say this. My mother would laugh at this, because she used to say to me when I was a kid growing up, and I'd sit with her in the garden and she'd say, one of these days you'll love gardening. I used to think, oh my God, get a life, how boring. Now I have to say, and particularly since we've been in lockdown, we've got a little garden out the back where we live in London. My husband and I just are absolutely fascinated in watching every single thing come up. We've planted things. Our garden used to be survival of the fittest. If you lived without any love and attention and you still flowered, then you had a place in our garden. But now I've really learned a lot about it, and I love it. And reading has been a huge a huge,
Yes.
you know, being able to be transported away when we can't travel and we can't move, to
Yes.
read books
Yes.
about
Exactly.
amazing places is yeah, has also been good for relaxation.
Yes.
What
Absolutely.
about
I
you?
do the
What do you do
same.
to
And
what do you do to
well,
relax,
I
Olga?
definitely, yes, I can say that I'm very much into the, unfortunately, exercise. I'm trying to push myself, but I've started dancing classes and I really enjoy it. So I started salsa, and yes, so that's the form of exercise that I absolutely love. And I probably walk more. I definitely read more. Yes, so it's things that I usually we never have enough time to do, or can't even imagine that we actually would ever do. And this is something that, you know, it can, certain things come out of the box all of a sudden, and then you start to enjoy or embrace or learn, I suppose. Yes, so I've took a number of courses online, and things like that.
My
Play a little bit.
daughter, who's my daughter's studying product design, and when the universities all closed down during the summer, she thought, I've got to do something, because my mum's on calls all the time, my dad's on calls, my brother's doing lessons. So she learned how to sew, and she bought a sewing machine, and now she makes clothes and sells them online, and it's just become this huge, I do
Oh,
think it's,
fantastic.
you know, if you're lucky enough, you know, not to be sick and not to be worrying about a job or whatever, it has surfaced some things of people's creativity that really, as
Yes,
you say, there just was never time for before.
yes, and it's also a mindset. It's definitely a mindset. So, you know, and for me, that's my personal kind of probably trait, that if I can focus myself either on positive or negative. So I basically eradicated completely this negative word or problem, and I just don't allow myself to think negative. And I think it puts us in a situation of living day to day. So we live today, and I wake up every morning and I live today. And I think
Yeah.
this is probably the path that helps me, for example. Yes.
I couldn't agree more. And you know, a couple of years ago, I read Arianna Huffington's book Thrive, and
Yeah.
there's a so much emphasis on that notion, exactly as you say, about being positive, and something about when you walk with fear and anger, that's what you pull towards you. And if you live your life looking for the positive, and it's hard sometimes, right? You turn on the news these days and
Yes.
there's so many things that feel like they're wrong with the world. But
Yes. Yes.
if you really guide yourself towards the positive, you pull positive things towards you. I really
Exactly.
believe.
That's exactly what I think is the most important, and I do. I try to do it every single day. Really. You know, my
Well,
kids
you're a
are
great
both in
example,
New.
Olga.
Thank you. Well, my kids are both in New York, so it's not easy. So, but once again, I gravitate to the thought that as long as they're okay, I'm happy. So I don't want to be selfish and feel sad that I'm not with them, because I consider it selfish. And that helps. So really.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yes, okay. Let me ask you a question, like sort of like very funny question. Did Elton John ever suggested again or offered you singing lessons? Or if he would you take it?
No, he's never offered me singing lessons. Um,
Oh,
uh, would I take them? Of course. You know, you couldn't turn down a teacher like that. But no, he's never offered me singing lessons. What he has done, actually, you know, he and David are really avid collectors of contemporary art, and so
okay.
I do feel like I've learned a huge amount from both of them about that. And we've actually,
Fantastic.
for fundraising, we've had limited editions from some amazing artists, Tracy Emin and Mark Quinn and Gary Hume. And so I feel like I've learned a lot about that. He's been a teacher in that
Well,
regard,
that's a
for sure.
great lesson. That evens it out, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. I'd be way too
Well,
embarrassed to sing in front of Elton anyway. So.
well, You know, and it's so lovely to see you. And I really miss our beautiful and wonderful times together, all of us. And I'm so happy that we're all in touch. And it's been a tremendous privilege to have you on Conversations with Olga. And thank you so much for agreeing to do that. And you're a dear friend. You're wonderful. You're absolute inspiration. And I miss you very, very much. And I really hope that one day soon, we all will come to some kind of a normality in terms of the travel, and we'll regroup again, and I'll see you very, very soon. But meanwhile, please stay well, love to the family, and we'll be connected as we always are.
Thank you, Olga. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for bringing, so much light and beauty into the world with all the lovely things that you do. You're an inspiration.
Thank you so much. And to everybody who was not able to listen to us, or who didn't have a chance to listen to the full episode today, the episode will be recorded. I will post it on my Instagram post and the Instagram story, and please feel free to share it and to repost it. And thank you so much for making the world a better place. And please thank John and David as well, Elton and David very much, for all of us as well.
I will do. Thank you. Stay well. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon. Bye.